Hello, today I want to talk about Doran from Friends and Foes, and the one I think is one of the most powerful mages in all of Zombicide fantasy. And it's all because of his number one skill, level 1 skill here. But he is the spellcaster of that set, and I would say they did a really good job of making an extremely strong spellcaster down to what his body slot is, and all of his skills basically says that you want to use magic with him. Of course, that means that you have to find magic that are better than just the standard starting magic before he gets online. But if he gets online, he pretty much can solo pretty much everything. So what does he do? Well, his first skill is +1 to die roll magic, and it's actually pretty simple. When you roll a die, let's say you roll a 4, you +1 it, so it gets easier for him to hit. And that is really important because many magic actually starts to hit at a roll of 4, so that means that he hits at a roll of 3 instead of a roll of 4, which is just fantastic, I think, and especially when you start getting into dual wielding, but I will make a separate video about that. And that skill alone makes him top tier, and it's also one of the skills that I really like in pretty much all character that has this for melee or range, or in this case magic, and I think this is one of the best skills in the game. I know it's not very interesting, but when you're dealing with trying to hit a percent dice, it's really important. Now in level 3 you get the choice between spellbook and +1 die, +1 die magic. That basically means that if you have a spell like this one that says you get 2 dice, instead you should just add 1 more die, getting even easier to hit. But he also gets spellbook, which is pretty much a must for all spellcasters, which basically means that every spells that you have in your inventory up here, he can cast as if he has it in his hand. And that's is exactly the same thing with enchantment. So if you find a lot of support spell, giving him to him, he pretty much doesn't need to unequip his weapons or damaging spell to cast enchantment, which is often the biggest problem with enchantment. And pretty much all caster classes have spellbook because it's such an important ability to feel like you're playing as a spellcaster. Now in level 3, he can choose between another +1 die to magic, which means if you have a die that says 2, you add 1 more. If you didn't take the 4, but you can get up to a 4 die on a 2 die spell. Or you can take the chance of saying roll 6 and +1 die to magic, with synergize actually pretty well with his +1 to die roll magic, which means if you roll a 5 or 6, you just add 1 more die, roll 1 more die, and of course if that roll a 5 or 6, it's 1 more. So this one has potential of getting you more die than this one. But this is the more risky one, this is the more secure one. Of course, when we're getting to red level, sometimes you have to go the risky route, and I really like that. That's the idea of him. That not always going for the optimal play, but sometimes if you have a lot of dice in the first place because of your dual wielding spells or his power wave, which I'll get to, taking this, having a very good increased odds to outscale this a lot. Now, the last one is spellcasting, and that basically says that once per turn, he has a free action to either using a spell or an enchantment action. And it's basically a free action just to either attack or cast an enchantment action, not using a sword with. And it's a skill I think it's really valuable, but personally sometimes I think this is one of the hardest choice to take because all of the 3 skills are just so good. Because you need to hit a lot of characters, and if you have a lot of dice in the first place because you have spells that give you a lot of dice, spellcaster is definitely the best one. But if you're more into the fun part of it, taking a roll of 6 +1 die, you again can outscale the spellcasting easily. Now, looking at his body slots weapon, if I can get that in focus, is Power Wave, and I quickly showed it off just before, which is a combat spell that says that if you don't use this, add one other die to another combat spell. So, since this spell is, if you have this spell equipped and you're trying to use another spell like Telekinetic Blast, this is a very bad example because it's only have one die. You simply just add another die to it, which is really good when you get up to those who actually start with more dice or hit easier. Adding one more die instead of using Power Wave, it's, again, like I just said, because one die magic is such a good skill, this is just coming in the form of a spell that he can place up here. And there are a lot of spells who have this plus one die magic, so you can actually reach a really high level of dice with him. And I think I had a game where one of my friends, I think he rolled, I think it was 8 dice every time he attacked. And it was like, okay, zombies came out, he eliminated them all in one turn. So I personally think that he is probably the strongest, single strongest combat mage there is. But he is just so reliable on getting those good spells. So yeah, and this is his figurine, and you can see it looks exactly like his character, all the way down to you can see his back in the back and all of his, things on the belt is really well designed, I think. But yeah, I personally think that if you got him, he can outscale all of the other characters so easily. And I will just could keep praising him for that. But the fun part is that I was actually not the one to realize that. I usually used a lot of other casters because I was like, one die to magic. But then my friend tried it in a game, and I was like, yeah, could you leave some zombies for us to gain some XP? And he was like, okay. And yeah, this quickly became one of the characters I use in very hard games, custom games, or in the base game, if I think that I need a caster that just is all around good at one thing. Now, of course, that means he's only good at that one thing. So if he doesn't get spells, he can easily be a liability, just going around trying to deal with it, something with a sword. So yeah, this was my review of Doran from Friends and Foe. I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, have a good day.